Um, all right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Core Talk. All right, so this time we want to try maybe do a little small series. We kind of want to discuss what colors best suits a player based on their playstyle.
Hmm.
For example, if you're a kind of more aggressive player, maybe you want to pick red. If you're a kind of a control freak, maybe you want to play purple. If you don't like people touching you, maybe you should play white. And if you fight dogs like throwing little chibis at people, you may play yellow. We kind of want to delve into that and see what your guys' responses are in the comments and kind of see what's the best color based on the playstyle. So I guess by protagonist bias, we're gonna pick red today first. All right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
for
Yep.
red, I think as a red player, people who like more so linear combos per se and likes that aggression should probably play red. If you like fighting but very low and fast or very high, there's not really a middle ground with red. One of those two, you kind of want to play it because, for example, you see Star Dragons, they kind of fight on the high end. I mean, you got to build to Nova, right? With a lot of times, and you got to build to the high end. While for Dinos, you kind of fight low, and because things are much cheaper in that case. There's not really a middle ground per se that does that. Also, while Red has removal, it's more of a threshold removal. There's nothing that's really just straight out just kill something. I think the highest thing with the highest BP that kills something, I think if I recall, is Nova, and then right below that is probably volcanic break. So it's one of those things like, okay, you kind of want to do things poor so by battle, which is why the most prominent ability in red right now, I would say that you see the most often, not necessarily the strongest, but the most often is confront. Confront is an ability where you say, hey, I'm attacking. You gotta pick someone to block me. We're gonna run the ones. All right. So in that case, you kind of want to force something from your opponent. And now it's indirect removal in that case because if you win, you kill something off their board, right? You don't necessarily have to go with their life, and you can kind of shortchange your opponent because they have to put more creatures down to do battle. And if you keep beating their cards and keep forcing the battles, they eventually lose cards in their hands. Unless it's an ability they proc off on destruction, where they may get a benefit from. But not a lot of cards do that per se. I mean, one of the most prominent cards, as we said in our last podcast, was the Mammoth. Go watch that, guys. Very nice, very nice. So I think in that case, the most prominent removal and for red in that case is kind of confront. I guess right behind Nova, where Nova just straight out just says, screw anything that's 10 or less combined. I mean, hey, I love that.
That's
It's like,
almost everything.
yeah, almost everything. It's like, hey, you got a board that's 10 or less? Well, goodbye to the board. Right also next to that is also an ability called Awaken. Awaken is an ability I have not seen a lot of love for from our community. And I think has some very interesting builds, like hopscotch. So basically, you're playing hopscotch with your cores. You activate Awakening, you hopscotch your cores that way, and you make them powerful by increasing their level. Or you hopscotch another way and make someone even more powerful. That's essentially what Awaken is. Now, why is this important? Because essentially, it's a flash ability for one. And two, it becomes very potent when you're doing combat and mid combat. So let's say you want to block and you want to increase the power threshold, Awaken. You now go from a level 1 to a level 3, and now you can block appropriately and kill respective creature. Or you're attacking, you want to force something, hey, go to level 1 to level 3, I'm killing that thing that you blocked. All right. So it kind of forces it kind of plays some mind games with your opponent. So why do I still think that despite all this, you should be an aggressive player to do this? Because you have to do battle with red. You cannot really win if you don't do battle. And there's no other ways for you to really check your opponent in that case. Like I said, their removal is a lot of number of thresholds. And if you don't meet that threshold or your opponent can just level up to pass the threshold, your removal kind of turns off the line. For example, one of those prominent removals in red is Burning Force. But if your opponent levels up to like 4 BP, 4,000 BP, Burning Force kind of turns off the line when it comes to removing creatures. That's it. They kind of get rid of the small guys. Another prominent one, which I haven't seen a lot of love for again, is Volcanic Break. Volcanic Break says, hey, if you use a soul core to pay for it, you just get something to 6 or less. Now, granted, 6 or less is kind of a good threshold because a lot of level 1 boss creatures are 6. That's 6. But once they level up and your opponent knows it's happening, well, level it up and now it's turn offline. So the straight up spell removal is not all that great, honestly. That's why people probably play a lot of Nova because they said it's 10,000 or less, and there's not a lot of things that's more than 10,000 from the jump.
Yeah.
you know.
Even
So
at level two, most of them stop at like seven, eight, even six.
yeah, and it just comes in that regard, and it becomes potent in that way. So I think in that case, it's just so strong in that regard. So so as I said, with red you have to battle because your spells isn't going to be like at some point they're going to turn offline. To be honest with you, so that's why you maybe see a lot of spells that's more so utility based or kind of get rid of nexuses. So you put your opponent further back so that you can put yourself further ahead, which might be why so many people have swung to Nova because Nova kind of builds high and has some abilities where it builds confront. And then if you get to Nova, right, you just attack, blow up board, and just go to town in that case. And there's some cards that kind of go with him, which I haven't seen a lot of. It's like Star Alter, where essentially if they block for whatever reason, you get back up again. Another fun tech I've seen for some players with Nova is like re-energize. Oh, that's a disgusting one. You re-energize the white card, and it says, hey, to pick a non-attacking unit and just regain. That's it. Re-energize. Regain. Sorry, too many batteries. Too much stuff. So regain just brings it back up, and it says, "Hey, let's go again." So I think that's very fun tech. Now, what do I think necessarily the weaknesses of red? Well, one, the spells are not their forefront. They're doing battle. They are literally embodiment of battle spirits. Get over here, like Mortal Kombat style, and we run into ones. How could this be bad? Because if you start losing the battle too much, you're now on the receiving end of your ability, which is literally just to exhaust your opponent of resources until they have nothing left. And that's not good, right? In terms of awakening, while it is a flash ability, because it's on the board, it's predictable. If they can kind of map out where you're going to play hopscotch with, they can kind of put you in a position where your hopscotch doesn't matter anymore, right? So this is where sometimes the spells kind of aid you in this regard, but they don't have a lot. I would say a lot of spells that are really prominent for them to use. I don't see a lot because they have things that give them BP. I think one of the most prominent spells that are not something that's maximally used, but you still see a lot, is in the Star Dragon build, which is Big Bang Energy, which is only the real thing to do is just make all your Star Dragons cheap and just basically the same cost equivalent to your life total, which is how people can honestly cheese out Nova. But overall, the spells are definitely at the forefront, so you don't really have to worry about too much throwing the flash step because other than what they have on the board. And that's where they kind of weaknesses are. So if you know you're going to beat them in battle, you know you're going to beat them in battle. It's just that's where things kind of get wide. Another weakness I would say when it comes to them is that again their mid game isn't all that decent. They fight cheap and low, or they fight really high and just go to town. So like for example, I'll use a Dino build. The Dino build is kind of just a good embodiment of that. They don't really have a mid card, right? They kind of just go really high and just attack multiple times. For example, what was it? Gigarex? No, let's say Gigarex. Giganorex? Giganorex, yeah. Where basically it's like, hey, I'm attacking, and then if I have Thundering Shattering Peaks, I'm going to attack again. And I'm going to do it again. And this gives +6 to the entire board. And not only that, he's very cheap. The more Pterosaurs, Emperors you have on your board, he gets reduced by 2. He gets a max reduced by 6. He costs 8. So if you have 3 of those things prior to that, he only costs 2. You only need to put a core on him. So basically, he essentially costs 3 cores to put on board. And that's why I mean, like, dinos either fight low or they fight high. But by putting a bunch of low creatures on the board, you slap one really big dude and just go to town. So red has no real good mid card, and that's where something they can get in trouble in. Because in that, if something excels in the mid game, it kind of shuts them out before they get to the late game, or they didn't really do too well in the early game. This is where they kind of just fall off, and it just goes downhill from there. So I cannot stress enough. One of the biggest strengths is that they do very good battle. The worst strength, they only really do battle. So if you can't get past that point, you kind of get shut out the game, which might be why we didn't really see, like we saw like what one red in top 8 for Oceania.
Before the top 8 split,
Mm-hmm.
there was a red player that played dinos, and that deck failed.
Mm-hmm.
Lost rather. And for Oceania's top 8, I think the first day on stream was Nova versus the Fable.
Mm-hmm.
And near the end of day 2 was the, I guess, Giganorex deck or the Emperor Beast deck versus something else. Can't quite remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess for the top 8, I don't remember there being a red deck within the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
It was more purple variant and purples.
Yeah. Yeah, which is such. But we'll speak on purple in another podcast. But man, purple, the purple. I don't keep saying it. The purple train is chewing, bro. It's out there
Yep.
and it's going strong. So I've spoken a lot from the point of view as a red player, what their strengths and weaknesses are. I would like to get some input on what the strengths and weaknesses are from outside. So we're going to move over to Corey here and kind of let him talk about what he thinks the strengths and weaknesses are of red. You don't play too much red, but you fought a lot red.
Right. I've fought a decent amount of red. I did play in the Esper tournament, and
Mm,
also, played against you. Also, you
mm,
have both experience in Battle Spirit Saga and the prior Battle Spirits, so you do
mm,
have knowledge in how red plays and how it plays prior.
mm,
And of course, I also watched the streamed matches of Oceania. And when it comes to the red builds, I always thought that the problem with red was always one of their greatest strengths. And it's almost like with other TCGs, which we somewhat briefed on in one of our podcasts. I think it was the first one,
mm,
which is the deck is already telling you how to build and play it.
mm,
So when it comes to that, you immediately get narrowed in on your limits.
mm,
You don't The person barely branches out to start thinking of other cards, which limits the capabilities of, for example, Awaken. When you were speaking on Awaken earlier, you were saying, the opponent kind of figures out, where their codes are basically going to be going,
mm.
or how to manipulate it. Well, how you shut that off, how you stop your course from being manipulated, because for purple, for example, when it comes to core removal, once those cores are stripped from you, there's really no Awaken. Like,
Yeah.
you have it if they bishop you, but there's like one core per unit. You're basically killing your own units at that point.
Mm,
You know, Players should think about Fulla. Fulla
mm,
will stop your course from being manipulated by your opponent.
mm,
When you think about things like Glass Bear,
mm,
Glass Bear allows you to block with Glass Bear, get that core from the void, go into your flash timing, move it later.
mm.
There's different. And honestly, I just thought about it while you were talking, honestly, about the whole Glass Bear combo. See,
Yeah.
things like that, standing on the outside, I just started thinking because while you were talking about the weaknesses and strengths of it, and I was thinking, wow, then, what can a person do to cover it? But if the archetype or the keyword is so dominant in its help and utility, you're going to kind of want to focus on it 9 times out of 10, or, more times
Mm,
than not. When it comes to Red's removal, I kind of agree with you on it. It is kind of poor. It really only hits certain thresholds like twos and threes and some fours, and then
the highest is 6, if I recall.
yeah, and I think that's what Volcanic break.
And that's what can't break, not including Nova, of course.
Right. Yeah, not including Nova and some of your other spirits like the dinosaur that I like that we're
Uh,
gonna get into in a little
all
bit.
right, all right.
But it's not that great. Your primary removal is confront. It's basically saying, you over there chilling, well, you're gonna give me somebody. And with that, it requires you to have to commit to that creature to make sure he's strong enough to beat over whatever that person
Yep,
has. Because
yep.
if they have something like you mentioned earlier, like the Mammoth, who's a 7K at level 1, your confront guy has to be big enough. But not only that, you have to make sure that that's the only thing on their board, because they don't have to give you the Mammoth. They can kind of
No,
just wait.
they can wait. And I think one of the most prominent things about Confront is the fact that it is very weak against things that flourish on destruction.
Yeah.
And like if us doing combat is going to benefit you even more than it benefits
Yep.
me, I'm in trouble.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. So you have to kind of time it. But it's like, and even with the previous discussion with Awakening, that's necessarily what I was talking about. Like you can with Awakening, see the thing with Awakening is that you can see the board. You don't have to
Yep.
worry about it. You can see like, oh, that has Awakening, that doesn't. So the cores are only moving in one direction, right? So you can't just play. You have to have Awakening is kind of like the equivalent of Royal Paladins and Car 5 Vanguard or Gold Paladins. We need to be buddies.
Yeah,
I need my
basically,
coworkers
you
out
need
there.
friends
I
out
need
there in
friends.
order for this to work.
Another problem with Awakening. So it's like I need buddies, and sometimes that's the problem with Red. They don't necessarily they excel at playing things cheap, but they don't necessarily excel at filling up the board quickly. So there's not a lot of things that kind of special summon cards like Yellow does when it comes to the Nexuses. So it's like, oh hey, I bring another coworker into work. There's another coworker. He's clocking in, and he just got them. No, it's just like you a one man show
Yeah.
sometimes.
And it's also like, what more can you do with Awakening? Like when you think about awakening, it's basically leveling up your units
Combat.
in mid combat.
Yeah.
That's what basically kind of how I see it. It's just you level up, you level down, and vice versa.
Mhm.
There's nothing that's really giving you too much of an edge. And like you say, your opponent can
See it
kind
coming.
of see it coming.
It's on the board.
And if you could just if you just for simpletons, your opponent can just go like, well, at least for this battle, since I can't kill them, they're both at max level.
Yeah.
Because that awakening is flash timing and it can happen back to back or however combination you want to do it.
Yeah.
So
that's the worst part about it. So it's just kind of rough, you know. That's why I think while there like there's a lot of decks in red that kind of tells you to play. There's some decks that don't, which I wish I hope that people kind of look at. Like for example, Ares is one of them. Sigworm. I'm not talking about Sigworm Nova. I'm talking about Sigworm because Sigworm's level 3 ability that people just forget is the fact that anything with Awakening gets Confront.
oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's a potent ability. You can make an Awakened deck that has Confront once you play this guy. And then Ares like, hey, at the end of my battle, anything with Awakening, refresh it. So it's a very aggressive deck. The problem with this, though, with these two guys, is that Sigworm needs friends. He needs coworkers, right? And you don't got coworkers, he can't do it. And like he needs a company. And Ares, his BP is extremely low for a person that has to attack and live through the attack to restand the board. He's only max 7,000 BP, level 3. It's rough.
Sad.
It is rough. So you have to play cards that power him up. Things like crap, I'm forgetting the card. It's in the start. Not landmine. It's a card that starting to start. It's a nexus that gives your entire board +1 if you get it to the level.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think Volcanic Canyon does it as well, if I recall. So cards like this are kind of necessary in those decks, but I can see why it's not a popular choice because it requires too much commitment.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also because you have Goku standing out there in front of Yamcha and Krillin.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
you got Nova.
Yeah.
Nova, even though Nova
Yeah.
does require a little bit commitment, the moment he comes out, majority of that there's a very high chance the moment he comes out, the conditions are set for him, and it's not like it's hurting the red player at all.
Mm-hmm.
He comes out, you have enough cores, majority of the time, you get your cores back inside your life. He's swinging, he's killing a couple of good bodies. Like this, I haven't seen this dude just take one body with him. This dude's taking a couple of people with him, and he's probably taking a life at the same time because nobody wants to give up that one unit they possibly have left to the Nova. You really can't top that deck. Like,
and if you have Sigworm, again, the regular one next to him, because here's the thing people forget. Nova has Awakening. He has Awakening. So if you put regular version of him next to him, he now also has Confront.
yeah.
Yeah, and so there's so much text on this card that makes him so profitable. That's like, oh, I can do a variant because I can and it's not even a variant. You need kind of Sigworm to profit from the life gain.
What about Gigano Rex?
Gigano Rex?
Like, you know what? No, we're gonna talk about my card.
Okay, let's talk about
We're
this
gonna
card.
talk about Raging Dino Rex.
Him?
Why you think he's not a good card? Why you think a deck can't be constructed to suit his needs? Like when you look face value, the dude has Confront. So that's already one of the most potent removals y'all got. It's you come here.
Yep.
You don't have a choice. You come here.
Yep.
Then the other part, which is at level 3, which costs 5 cores.
Yep.
Select one of your opponent's spirits with 4,000 BP or fewer and destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he can't mix in with a build for himself or any other build, whether it's as a main character or side cast?
One, I think it's just because of the fact that dinos, they like to go fast and cheap. He's not fast nor cheap. And on the flip side, for Star Dragons, they like to go high, but a lot of the Star Dragons aren't really utilized. What I mean by utilized? Andromeda, if I recall, if his name. I'm sorry. Even though I play red, I'm terrible at names, guys. I say big dragon, small dragon, and sparkly dragon over there. So it's just how it is for me. So with Star Dragons, with the one from the Star Carbon Star deck, he blows up a card or a Nexus, which is very vital in this guy, off the drop. Now this guy blows it up on attack, but here's the difference, right? So the reason why this is powerful for them, he's a Star Dragon, which he has an entire utility kit around him. He's a Pterosaur. Pterosaurs don't have a lot of utility behind them. They got like I think one Nexus to their name that actually helps them out compared to that. And they like to fight low and cheap. And his brother, which is honestly, I guess, the star of the show, let's call him Sasuke. And this is let's like, not in fact, Sasuke, because they're both kind of cool. So this is the little brother that kind of hides in the corner, and Gigano is the big brother that kind of just works out in the gym all day. Because he comes out fast and quick. You just need to put 3 Pterosaurs, which are all very cheap, and they all a lot of them have reductions that just literally covers their entire cost. You know, true. So you put Gigano out there, and Gigano, you put a Sacred Thundering Peaks, get level, I think level 1, 2, get confront, attack again, entire your power board by 6, and just go to town and kind of fight them. Because at this point, if you're on low health total, everything technically now has confront because your entire board just got +6, and you just confronted 2 things, right? From the jump. So the reason why I don't think people utilize him, he's not necessarily a bad card. He's just basically outshined because one, his level 3 for him to blow up a card requires 5 cores. Why would I want to do that when I could do Nova, or I can put the same 5 cores on Andromeda, who just blew up a card on summon and now has confront is also 10,000, right? And can do that. Second, his BP for the straight confront is only 5,000, and we just talked about how you have to win battles. So from level 1, if you lose this battle, you just paid X amount of cores to get this guy out, and he basically just died on crackback because that's the only thing he's doing. He has to swing for him to be profitable. Or you have to basically get him to level 3 immediately, which is 5 cores. He's only 9,000, by the way. He's a 7 cost, 4 reduction, and you put 5 cores on him to go to 9,000, and you have to do battle. If he loses on battle, he just does nothing else, right? And that's the problem with Red. If you lose a lot. And losing 5 cores on 1 card, because he's only 9,000, is not as profitable as the guy who Gigano says, hey, I'm only 1 core on me. I'm now immediately level 3, power my entire board by 6, confront also as well, compared to this guy, oh, I killed someone's 4. And that's another reason, too. I personally don't like him. Red, we just talked the issue. Red has a threshold removal problem.
Yep.
If he's 4, someone says, I'm going 5. Yep. With confront, the threshold is as big as I am. If I'm 16, anything that's 16 is coming this way.
Well, what I was thinking of him is based on what we've been seeing in Oceania. He can tackle a lot of things. Actually, he can tackle a lot of boards. From the videos that we watched a little bit, the other day, I think it was Sunday, when we watched some of the Oceania builds. Let's look at Fortress. Fortress out there, 7K body, just level 1. He's thick, big, got some stuff happening. His sidekicks are probably Fulla and probably Pegason. But when you think about it like that, I was thinking of, let's look at Raging Dino. Like it's in a certain point in the game where you probably got him out there with 5 cores on him. You probably got somebody else out there, 2 other guys out there. I'm just saying you got the grizzly bear and I don't know, the fish or something. I don't know. But let's say he swings and he confronts 1 person. Now, granted, you don't want to give me, you probably don't want to give me the mammoth just yet. You want to keep that mammoth. So you give me another unit. Let's say you give me Fulla because you're not playing purple, you're playing something else. So you give me Fulla. Well, his other skill, which kills something that's 4 DP or less, Pegason. Pegason's gone.
Does Pegason have armor though?
I'm not. I think Pegason might have red purple.
Yeah, I thought that was red purple. Yeah.
But well, let's say something else. But he can check something else that's currently on the board. Yeah. He'll take 2 units with him and then slowly start chipping down the board. The only way for him to not, I'll say the only way for him to not swing, which is Raging Dino to not swing, is for you to commit a little bit more to your mammoth into Fortress, putting him to level 2, putting 4 cores on him, meaning that's less cores that you have to put somewhere else. You're not going to swing with your mammoth. I'm not swinging with my Raging Dino so you can block with your mammoth. Yeah. I'm going to sit here and chill. Then Giganto Rex comes out with all his muscle arms and stuff. Yeah. Now we're in the spot. Eventually you're going to give me this giant mammoth. Yeah. That's how I was just thinking of Raging Form is a board checker, because outside of that, there's not too many removals that's going to get him out the way because one, Dino Reds play really cheap stuff.
Yeah.
I was about to say the other way. Really cheap stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you have enough stuff out there to circumvent Deadly Balance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, Curse might come in, not Curse,
Core
Core Removal may come into effect,
that's
but
already probably.
you may have three fullers or so in there to try to help you with that. But
Yeah.
that's just deck building ideas. But outside of that, the only way of I'm seeing Raging Form that's going to leave the board is if there's a unit that's already over there that has a static current power that's higher than this.
Mm-hmm.
Not too many people play a lot of power up cards at the moment. It's more of just get that out my way.
Yeah.
Dream Bomb or what's that red card?
Oh, Burning Force.
Burning Force. Cards like that. But once he reaches like his 7, which is level 2 on Raging Form, just like 7 is level 1 on Mammoth, it's hard getting rid of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's a checks and balance once you pass a threshold. You don't have to swing with Raging Form. At this point, is what do you have to get him off the board besides X amount of cards I'm expecting? So that's how I was thinking of Raging Form.
Mm-hmm.
Or not Raging Form, Raging Dino.
No, I understand you. I see your point, but it just comes down to, I guess, the way the color is played versus, I guess, the situation. Red profits from swinging. While he may check board, in terms of longevity, he's going to get outscaled.
Yeah.
And a lot of 7 costs in this game outshine this dude by far. Like, he is literally the star in the distance while we have like several Novas and several Nebulas that outshine this guy. He's basically supporting cast. And the problem is that there's better supporting cast than him. So that's the problem with him. Because a lot of the time, when you see a red player, they're going to want to kind of put a card up there and then build up. They don't immediately usually come out level 3. And if you build him up or you leave him exposed to that, it exposes him to 1 core removal if he only has 1 car on him. Exposes him to cards like what we say, like Carrier, where it's like, yo, come my way and I will show you what's good.
Yeah.
And I'll block you in the case. It's just a lot of investment for not a lot of profit. And there's just other cards that kind of does the job better. Indirectly, Gigano Rex, Gigano Rex, dang it, I'm trying to learn his name. Gigano Rex does the same job, but he turns all these little guys into power creatures, right? And he has confronts himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they both have access to Sacred Thundering Peaks, which both tell him to confront. But his issue is that like, he's cheaper on core compared to his brother. Cheaper on core, he gets more power. He also has confront, and while he does not have a 4K removal, he looks at his entire board and says, all right, we're going in. And if I have more than 5 and you don't have enough blockers, we're basically confronting anyway. Because that's 5 lives.
Basically, yeah.
So,
you have absolute shit. This is basically confront, because now I'm confronting you for getting.
yes. So basically, that 4K threshold doesn't mean anything anymore because he's taking things out that's 6K or higher. Because all these little creatures, minimum like 2, and they become now 8.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So
I know we're going to go a little bit over time, but as a red player, I want to go over. I'm gonna name these colors, and if you could just give the audience your thoughts on how to tackle these certain colors,
that's gonna be hard. You have to give me a deck too.
That will give them a little bit to work with.
Okay.
So, what if a red versus red?
Red versus red. I'd say Burning Force might be your best friend, and whoever has confronts first might also be your best friend because you kind of want to get things out the way. Because you both play things for cheap, and you both establish those things. But the reason why red has cheap cards is so that you can establish your big creatures later. It helps with cost reduction, right? And I don't think there's a lot of good nexuses for red. I think the only one we really see now nowadays is Volcanic Canyon, which you draw an additional card during the draw step and then discard a card. You kind of want to do that. So I would say Burning Force is another good one. Nexus Removal is another good one, but there's only really one potent Nexus in red. And so Media, good card you want to put in. That's good for the mirror matches. Burning Force, good confront cards, and let's say for example it's a Nova match. Well, if it's a Nova match, one of the cards I would suggest, if you kind of burn their board and don't let them go wide, one card I would suggest is Deadly Balance, because Nova cannot get past Deadly Balance. Is just him. He's dead. That's it. And that hurts a red player because you invested all that into this super transformer and he just died to like a 3 cost spell. So, so, and chances are, if they use something like Big Bang, if they might invest like a 3 card combo, Big Bang Energy, Sig Worm, then Nova. You just stopped it all with you. So they, for their 3 cards, you played 1 card, offered one of your own, Deadly Bounce. So I think Deadly Bounce is really good on that matchup. When it comes to the Dinos, they have a really big problem. Which what was that white card again that really helps with that? The core removals.
Fuller?
Fulla, yeah. Fulla, put that in your deck. Not against red on red, but just against any like purple. But the reason I said if you were in a random match, you put a purple card in there, Curse Dragon, remove all the cards because most of the time they're probably only gonna have 1 core on those guys. So if you pull out a purple card in your build as a red player and just Curse Dragon, cool. Fun thing about this all, the fun fact, fun lore, and I know we're going off time, but this is really important to me. That Cursed Dragon is actually Sigworm's dead body. Just want people to know that. Just read the flavor text. It's actually great. Immaculate. So, so yeah, so as a red player, if you establish board first, it's very hard for the other player because it's basically who hits harder at this point. It's like 2 inboxers. So eventually, when you get hit in the ribcage, you're going to fall back. So, but yeah, I think that's what I would say. A red on red. Well,
So what about the meta's favorite, purple?
purple, man, I think you would wanna go wide and have established cores. And I wouldn't even blame if you go cheap. Also, Burning Force, this card's too good.
Definitely
The must, because you gotta destroy their nexuses, man. You cannot let them get that cost reduction. Because the thing about purple cards, they're more on the expensive side, so let them pay that amount. Slow them down. Because once they remove your board as a red player, it's kind of hard to get back from that. And as a particularly Dino players, bro, purple is not your friend. All right, these guys are gonna look at you for breakfast because everyone always does is they put a core on just 1 card. With them, you want to put multiple cores on these dinosaurs, and Fulla is definitely going to be your best friend as a side deck against purple. When it comes to Nova, Deadly Balance, you want to watch out for that. It really kills you, man. And there's not really a lot you can do. There actually is something you could do. Well, no, not really. Because if they do the Balkis and Curse combo, Dragon combo, you can't even activate Awakening. So you're kind of just screwed on that regard.
Yeah.
You know?
You're gonna need a couple of creatures out there, probably
Yeah,
with Fuller.
yeah. So Fulla is probably going to be your best friend against purple in general, for a red player because your cores are actually somewhat vital to you. Especially if you're running Nova, you want to make sure he's a level 3. Get some friends out there to make sure you can prepare for that. The curse, that's fine. You know, they gotta do battle. If they lose during battle, you can put something out that's bigger and you can win during battles. And if you get Nova out there, that curse won't matter anyway because they're all gonna go poof. All right, so
Nope.
that's what I would say against purple. You know, you just want to watch out for the core removal because it's so brutal against red, especially if you're not established, because you have to do battle. And there's cards in purple that remove cores during battle, which is rough. So even Awakening, sorry, bro. So
All right. So what about the fan favorite, white?
white, white, hmm, armor. Confront those. If they don't have armor, blow them up.
So simple.
I'm so serious because the worst they can do to you, they do battle, but they're the defensive side of things. So you're already in your natural habitat for one. Two, they can take your cards back to your hand. If you run a lot of cheap stuff, eventually you're not going to be paying any cores for them. You pay with one for one, and then you pay something that's like what costs another one. Now you have 2 cores on. You have 2 symbols on there. Now you pay something that's for 2, but you didn't pay 2 because now you have a reduction of 2. So you just literally start popping cards down, which is what dinos do. And if you're doing Big Bang Energy, ooh, goodness gracious, like if they don't got armor and Nova comes out, it's a very bad time for them because once you get to the late game and Nova's there, that's kind of where this catered towards red. So it's like, oh, blow up their board, cool with that. But I've been seeing a lot of enterprises a lot, so maybe that may change. So we'll see. But I would say against those, dinos can be a typically a all right matchup because if you go wide and they absolute shield you, that's okay as long as they don't return all your cards back to hand. And then even if they do, as a dino player, you're cheap, so you're not going to be paying too much to get your established board back. Honestly speaking, and the only time you really have to be concerned is if they have a multi-blocking spirit. Maybe something like like Enterprise, or if they sometimes see maybe like Elk or some sorts,
Or suppression.
or suppression. So that can be pretty rough. Where at this point that could also that's equivalent to an absolute ice shield because you use suppression. Now they can block anything while rested, and you're like, well, shoot, all my creatures are weaker than that guy, so I might as well end my turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I will say. So I would say, don't let them get a good mid game. If they have armor, confront them. If they don't, blow them up. That's the best. And their nexuses, get rid of them because there's quite a few things in their builds that restand themselves or refresh themselves because they have a nexus. So honestly, kind of same as purple. Just don't let them get that utility up and going.
Yep. All right, and I guess last is the underdog, yellow.
Yellow, 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 my good friends. Ah, yes. I I know I've been saying just blow them up though, because the yellow with yellow, just blow 'em.
Kaboom!
Kaboom! Like Burning Forest is gonna definitely be Burning Forest. I feel like Burning Forest and Volcanic Canyon are kind of like the best stars in the red in general. Putting that out there. Yellow, they excel at low creatures. Once you get above a certain threshold, which is basically level, you don't really have a lot to worry about because you can just block them out. Really, the only thing you have to really worry about is Cathedral. But if you blow up Cathedral, what do you got to worry about? You know, which is where the Nexus comes to play because they really more profit so off their Nexus and spells than they do their creatures. And the only really creature that you may have to watch out for, seeing how Luster's not doing a good job right now, is honestly Godspeed.
Yep.
Because even Pegasus, if you just kill one of them, Pegasus is not as potent. It's because Pegasus is kind of a 3-man show. Godspeed, on the other hand, could be any man's show. So, because at that point, your levels, that's the only one you have to really watch out for. Because as you keep killing their chibis, you start to build their trash. Godspeed comes out and is like, hey, all those guys you have over there that's now level 2, don't worry about it. And it's funny enough because the only real creature at that point you could probably do to kind of outmaneuver them is probably Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Awakening, where you can level them up. That's probably the most flexible ability against Godspeed. But you kind of want to beat them into a pulp early game and kind of shut out the game at that point. Because late game with Godspeed, that's where you might get into trouble. Because at that point, your creatures are kind of more established, and these just shoot out a bunch of small creatures. Looking at like Cathedral or like Spiral Tower, where especially some of these level 2s, then you could run into problems. So their Nexus is, if you see Cathedral, get rid of it. It's problematic. And just let's let it rock, honestly speaking.
Yep. Yep.
All right, so
Well, guys, thank you so much for sticking around and listening to us babble. The core talk was great today. We will see you guys every Tuesday and Thursday around the same time, 4 p.m. That's going to be our usuals. Don't forget, we have a tournament coming up, the Mac Collection Tournament, Battle Spirit Saga. It's going to be on our Discord. Registration starts April the 2nd. It is a free tournament, so don't forget to sign up. Flyers right here on the screen. Discord links in the description below. Well, as Battle Spirits like to say, let the core decide your fate. And we like to say,
let the battles determine your champion.
and we will see you guys on the next one. Peace.
See ya.